What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Thanks as always for taking the time to hang out. If you were following along on my Twitter account, watching on our FTN YouTube page, if you have any questions throughout this show, please leave them there and we will get to them on this show. We'll address start and sits tomorrow. I'll have some start and sits and some guys that I'm feeling a little bit more confident about as opposed to others in the industry, and maybe the other way around as well. Players I'm less confident to roll out this week, like maybe Naji Harris. But today is all about today. Thursday night football. We have the Jags and the Bengals. I mean, in years past, I'd be like, I'm really going to watch this game. I mean, I watch every game. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I will watch football. But this is an exciting game, right? I think it is. We have two former number one overall quarterbacks in Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. I think it could be an exciting game. Gilles Gallant is going to join us. He is of FTN Bets. He has two shows that you should be checking out: Dog Day Afternoon on Bets TV and Touchdown Town on Sundays. And he is the king of calling touchdowns. So we're going to go digging for some touchdowns and some props. We got same game parlays. We got everything here for you today. I will also touch on some of my favorite DFS plays for week 4 of the NFL season, as well as a few value plays to target. And tomorrow we have tenacious David Jones, who is an absolute stud in the DFS injury industry. We will get to injuries in a little bit. Maybe that's on my mind. But D Jones is like, he's just a baller, man. This guy is like screenshot after screenshot. He just is so good at DFS. So we can ask him a little bit of advice, how he does it and who he's feeling. That tomorrow. But like I said, today is all about Jags and Bengals, and I'm looking forward to this game. We have Cincy 7.5-point favorites, the total at 46. You're not backing Cincinnati on the money line at minus 320. Maybe if you want to include them into like a same game parlay, you can get them in there. I do think they win this game, but I don't think they cover it, as we talked about yesterday on this show. It's too many points for me. I'm not there yet. The Bengals have been impressive. The defense looks better. They got double-digit sacks. They went into Pittsburgh and won. I think that's more on the Steelers, and Jacksonville hasn't looked good at all. But I think we see Trevor Lawrence's best game here. I think just under the bright lights now in game number 4 in the NFL, having that, he's only played Joe Burrow once. You go back to the 2019 national championship in college, where Burrow absolutely lit him up. I mean, it was a no contest game, LSU and Clemson. And the numbers here, I remembered them, but I had to double check. 463 passing yards for Burrow and 5 touchdowns. Lawrence didn't have any. It was a 42-25 win for LSU, the perfect season for the Tigers. But I just think, number one pick last year, number one pick this year, I do believe there's something in that narrative. I really, truly believe that. And I think we'll see the best game from Trevor Lawrence here. So I think that the Jags cover that 7.5. That's where I am leaning. But this really should be, I think, an entertaining game. I think we will see some fireworks here. There's a bit of a difference in the Bengals offense this season compared to last season. And looking at some of our pace tools over at ftndaily.com, oh man, there's so many wicked tools over there. I get lost in and very sidetracked. I mean, doing show prep and pumping out some articles and trying to get the NHL draft kit, by the way, which will launch, I believe, tomorrow. And we'll talk about some sleepers and some busts on tomorrow's show here on Mean Streets. But I just get lost in all these statistics that we have over at FTN. And if these are trends that will continue, if they are just outliers. Last year, we saw a pass-heavy team in the Bengals. Joe Burrow, 40.4 passing attempts per game, which number 2 in the NFL behind Big Ben at 40.5. He had at least 30 passing attempts in all 10 of his games. He topped 30 in 9 of the 10. So like 30 was the floor. He even had 34 passing attempts in the game that he left due to the injury against Washington. Like he was slinging it. And then you add Jamar Chase to this offense and you think, oh boy, like Joe Burrow, like this guy is going to be an amazing fantasy quarterback this season. You got Higgins, he's got Boyd, he's got his old buddy Chase, he got a great running back in Joe Mixon. They're going to play up-tempo and they're going to sling it all over the field. The defense is still going to be bad and they're going to throw the football. That hasn't been the case so far. As I mentioned, the defense is playing a little bit better. They have some players that they've picked up over the past couple years. I don't think that this is going to be the true test to see if this defense is absolutely solid. I think you could roll them out in fantasy, even knowing that I think, what I said with Trevor Lawrence having a breakout game, he still has looked like a rookie quarterback and he's had a lot of bad throws and the turnovers are certainly there. You could roll out the Bengals defense. But this Cincinnati team is playing a little bit different. Fifth slowest pace in terms of just seconds per snap. Joe Burrow only has one game with 30 passing attempts. I mentioned last season. Only one game this year with 30. And he was well over 30 in each of his 10 games last season. So playing at a slower pace. And Joe Mixon, under Zach Taylor, this offense has been a little bit more balanced this season. Last year, Joe Mixon only played 6 games, but he was a guy that you can count on getting 20-plus touches week in and week out. And it's basically been the exact same sort of game plan for Mixon with Zach Taylor, more of a balanced attack offense. I thought maybe originally that they played to a slow pace because of the knee injury and just scaling it back from Trevor Lawrence, not making it too difficult for him, trying to just make life easier for him. You have a solid running back in Joe Mixon, give him the ball, and then, pass to some of your weapons here and there. The same can't be said about Jacksonville on the other side. They are running at the fastest pace in the NFL, 21 seconds per snap. Of course, they have to because they've been down in a lot of games. Their pass percentage number 2 in the NFL behind Tampa Bay, who has just abandoned the run altogether. But the Jags are going to be among the leaders in air yards, in passing attempts, in plays run at a very fast pace all season long. We'll get into some props in a little bit, but DJ Chark is 3rd in air yards. Marvin Jones is inside the top 10 in air yards. Both guys have a healthy target share. Marvin Jones has been solid, at least 5 grabs in each of his 3 games. He has 2 touchdowns this season. DJ Chark has 2 touchdowns this year. I think we could see some fireworks here today. I'm kind of leaning with the over 46, knowing that the Bengals have been playing at a slow pace, but I think they just have their way on offense. And certainly I think Joe Mixon is in for a very big game. We could see the Bengals with a 3-1 record after 4 weeks, which would be one of the biggest surprises in the NFL. It would be for me. I think you can roll out all the options here on offense. Roll out everybody. T. Higgins is not going to play. Roll out Boyd. Roll out Jamar Chase. Of course, he's got 4 touchdowns in 3 games, an NFL record for a rookie. You're clearly rolling out Joe Burrow and maybe Lawrence in a super flex, right? But Robinson, if you're on the fence with Robinson, we talked about him being a sell high, but you roll him out anyways, coming off a big game where he went 15 for 88, had a touchdown on the season. He has 15 targets and 12 grabs. And if they are playing from behind, he could be a guy that gets a lot of catches out of the backfield. Quickly, rapid fire here through some news and injuries. Again, tomorrow is the big day. If these guys don't get on the field tomorrow, you need to find backups to replace them on your fantasy squads. This just came up before we went live. Lamar Jackson, a back flare-up. He's got a tough matchup this week against the Broncos. He's ranked as QB 8 for me. There are a lot of other quarterbacks that would roll out. But of course, if you have Lamar, you're playing him with that upside. But let's keep an eye on this situation. If he doesn't play, it's not good for anybody in this offense. Deandre Hopkins, ribs, returned to practice yesterday. Darrell Henderson, ribs, returned to practice yesterday as well. I mentioned T. Higgins. He is done. Not going to play in this game here tonight. Julio Jones looking iffy to play this weekend. And I think we said that yesterday, but we also gave a shout out to Nick Westbrook-Akine, who led the team in snaps and targets. He had 4 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I'm playing him in a deep league this week as a flex. I think you can maybe talk about playing him in DFS as well as like a punt play. He may come with higher ownership, higher ownership than one would like for Nick Westbrook-Akine, who I just learned the pronunciation on Sunday. Gerald Everett placed on COVID list. Will Disley could fall into a few more snaps. You got to be pretty desperate to roll that guy out. Andy Dalton limited. I don't know what that means. I really don't know. Ty Conklin, elbow mispractice yesterday, and then MVS hamstring was limited yesterday. If he doesn't play, we could see Robert Tonyan fall into a few more targets. And then Elijah Mitchell returned to practice with a shoulder injury on Wednesday. I'd like to say that he comes in and gets 17, 18 carries like he did in week 1 and week 2. But that San Fran running back duo is a complete mess. I say duo. It's like there's like 5 or 6 guys mixed in that running backfield. So a complete headache. But I think if you have Elijah Mitchell, you're in a tough spot this week. You can play him as a flex. And I think maybe even Sermon, depending on the context as well. I'm going to give a shout out here to LaShawn McCoy before we wrap up. But Mike Garafolo says that he's going to sign a 1-day contract with the Eagles and he is going to retire. He's also going to get honored as well as Andy Reid, who's making his return to Philadelphia this weekend at the Link. And both guys will get honored at halftime. Shady is a back-to-back Super Bowl champion, right? With the Bucks and with the Chiefs, not playing as a backup running back, but he is a two-time champion. He goes out as a champ. Good for Shady. 11,000 yards on the ground, 4.5 yards per carry, 518 catches, over 3,800 receiving yards, 12 years in the league, 89 total touchdowns, 6 Pro Bowls, first team, named first team twice. And I was just taking a look because, I mean, I'm very familiar with Shady and what he did with the Eagles, but his 2013 season, get a load of this. 314 carries, led the league. 1,600 rushing yards, led the league. He had 100 yards per game, also led the league. 366 touches, led the league. And 2,100 yards from scrimmage, also led the league. This guy had a lot of great seasons. 17 touchdowns, led the league in 2011. He is not a Hall of Famer, but there are a lot of great memories when it comes to LaShawn McCoy. A lot of snow games that he took advantage of as well over the course of his career. And I was at that one snow game against the Lions where he ran all over Detroit in the second half. He couldn't be stopped, man. He carried that ball super weird, right? Like rockabye Shady. Like he just like a couple fumbles here and there. Andy Reid always told him, like, carry that ball. Like, come on, hug it. And he just couldn't. He was always just carrying it so loosely, but he was so good at the game of football. Another guy that is so good at calling touchdowns, like LaShawn McCoy, getting in the end zone. Gilles Gallant, this guy can call touchdowns. He's in here next. Mean Streets continues on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with the usual Thursday guest. I always get fired up for Thursday because, one, we have Thursday Night Football, but we also have the GOAT in here, Gilles Gallant of FTN. You can catch out his multiple shows over at Bets TV. Gill's got a lot going on. Dog Day afternoon and Touchdown Town on Sundays. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome into Mean Streets. How are you?
Meaney, it's always good to check in. I'm struggling with a cold thanks to my petri dish of bacteria of my kids, but there's no way that I was going to miss this show today. I'm pumped. Surprisingly, for a Thursday nighter that on paper just does not look very good between the Jaguars and the Bengals.
Yeah, you know what? I'm feeling a little something too. You and I are both north of the border. The weather's a little chilly, a little chillier than other places, of course, in the world. So maybe it's just something going around. But, I think this game is going to be exciting. I don't know. Maybe it's just me talking it up and telling people it will be exciting. But Joe Burrow, number 1 pick last year, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 pick. These two, just high-profile players in college. Very different, of course. Like Burrow kind of moved up the ranks. Urban Meyer is very familiar with him, recruited him to Ohio State. And then, of course, Urban Meyer very familiar with Trevor Lawrence, knowing when he took the job in Jacksonville that was going to be the first overall pick. And clearly he was happy with that. But he has certainly looked like a rookie. Before we get into some touchdown plays, am I crazy to think that this game could be entertaining? Like, do you have a lean with the total at 46 or the spread at 7.5? I think I'm not ready to give the Bengals that much credit that they win by more than a touchdown, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm on the same page here. I just don't think that the Bengals should be favored by more than a touchdown against anybody yet. I kind of think that through the 3 games, the sample size is just too small of what we've seen. Because, I mean, you look at it, they're playing against Ben Roethlisberger, his arm is cooked. Like, he can't throw the ball. A poo-poo platter kind of like of Andy Dalton and Justin Fields didn't look that great. And then in week 1 against the Vikings, they got carved up. So
they did.
So for myself, like, I mean, I know that they obviously won the game in week 1, but I just think with the way that this team is, I honestly think that their secondary is a little bit overrated if you look at the stats through 3 games as a result of playing against those quarterbacks. So really what it comes down to for me is of whether or not Jaguars can move the ball. And that one's tough. But at the same time, I just feel like that magic number of 7.5 points, once it's past 7, then I have to kind of start looking at the dog in this spot. So that's probably where I lean. Unfortunately, though, I'm like, I can't take the money line underdog in this spot. Just no thanks.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's money line is kind of out the window altogether here today. You don't want to lay the juice on a Bengals team that we don't feel confident to win by more than a touchdown. But yeah, you're right. That week 1 game, they were carved up. So they've taken advantage of a couple soft matchups. And believe it or not, the Steelers may just be a soft matchup all year long. Certainly they can't get anything done on offense. We could see some garbage time. We could see like a backdoor cover here from Jacksonville. What are you looking at in terms of touchdowns? Is James Robinson in play for you today?
No, not this time, although I do like his odds. I've seen it around plus 120 to plus 130. So if anybody was to ask me, like, hey, what do you think of Robinson? Anytime you're getting a starting running back, especially a pass-catching back like that at plus money, you're not going to hear too many complaints from me. But I tried to go with somebody who I thought had a little bit better value for the Jaguars. And I think that's Marvin Jones. I took him at plus 200. Those odds are at BetMGM. Obviously, he leads the team in red zone targets. As far as snap counts go, he's still leading the team at 95% of snaps for all wide receivers. Caught a touchdown in 2 or 3 games. And like I was kind of alluding to, I just think that this Bengals pass defense is a little overrated. I think any pass defense will look really good when Ben Roethlisberger can't throw a pass 5 yards and Matt Nagy is basically getting in the way of him, Dalton, and Justin Fields. Like, you watch the Bears, they went right down the field on this defense, and Allen Robinson scored a touchdown on them on the first drive of the game when they played against Cincinnati. So I just think that Marvin Jones is probably my favorite Jaguars player to score a touchdown today.
You're talking to me, bud. I'm a big Marv fan. I am a huge Marv fan. He's the only player, actually, who has had at least 9 touchdowns in 3 of the past 4 seasons. He's been a red zone beast his entire career. Heck, this is a revenge spot for Marv Jones. He had a 10-touchdown season back in the day with the Bengals. You know, revenge is whatever. We just like to bring it up because it's jokes. But he is clearly the number 1 guy for Trevor Lawrence. He's among the leaders in air yards. He's getting a healthy target share. And he is a beast inside the red zone. I absolutely love that call. More on Marvin Jones a little bit later on. I got some long shot, same game parlays, but I think he's going to be heavily involved in the offense. And the Jags are just playing up tempo. Now, part of that is they have to play from behind, unfortunately for them, but their seconds per snap, according to our pace tools, number 1 in the NFL, and the pass rate is inside the top 3 as well. So Marvin Jones is going to get his. Who else are you looking at?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention there's a reason why Trevor Lawrence's interception prop today is at 1.5 instead of 0.5, because books know that he's going to probably have to air it out, and more than likely he's going to get picked probably at least once. So generally those are always set at over under 1. It's not a coincidence that he's had 3 interceptions and then 2 for all 3 games. So for the next touchdown score, this one was tough because I had to look through so much different data within the Bengals to try to find some value, because I felt like there was no value to bet on Joe Mixon at minus 160, Jamar Chase at minus 110, plus 100, depending on the book. And even Tyler Boyd, you might be able to see him maybe as high as plus 120 at certain books. So instead, I'm going with Joe Burrow at plus 380.
Nice.
You can get those at FanDuel. He actually had a red zone carry in week 3 versus the Steelers. That was his first red zone carry of the year. So I think he's starting to gain confidence in from that knee injury. He had 3 rushing touchdowns in 2025 in his senior year versus LSU against some of the stronger defenses in the game. And really, like I said, I think it's the best value that you can get for a Bengals player, because once you start looking past the plus 200 range, it gets bleak. Like you're looking at CJ Uzomah, Mike Thomas, Auden Tate. Like there's no track record for any of these guys. I mean, you could make a case for maybe Chris Evans as a long shot, maybe Samaje Perine, backup running back. But even then, like Joe Mixon so far through 3 games, he's playing like over 92% of the snaps right now from the running back spot. So they don't take him off the field. So it's almost near impossible to kind of justify taking a backup running back too in this spot. So Joe Burrow for me at plus 380, when I found those odds at FanDuel, that was, to me, that's the best value I think for a touchdown score for the Bengals in this spot.
Yeah, I dig that one. I was going to ask you about Trevor Lawrence, but I think that's maybe getting a little too cute. Like, how many plays are they going to run inside the red zone? And when they get there, is it just going to be a handoff to, I mean, they handed it off to Carlos Hyde, who got stopped at the 1. He could have been the guy to run it in last week. And then it was James Robinson who got back on the field and ran that in. I'm seeing Trevor Lawrence here at plus 450. Is that getting too cute? Like, overall, we're just looking at a team that's probably not going to run a lot of plays in the red zone. I think they have 3 red zone rushing attempts all season. So they're not a team that really lives inside the red zone. But I think both quarterbacks, I think that they want to show each other up a little bit. Burrow had that monster game against Trevor Lawrence where he had 5 total touchdowns and he was running all over the field, and his knee does look like he's running with a little bit more confidence, right? So I do like that call. We getting too cute with Trevor Lawrence at plus 450. Would you take a shot there? Like maybe
nobody would look at this face. Yeah, nobody would look at this face and think we're getting too cute. So I am actually going to try to get a little too cute. I am going to take Trevor Lawrence at plus 450 at BetMGM. Now, I will say that of the 3, this is the one I have the least confidence in. Even though I have some stats to back it up, one of the things that always makes me a little leery is when I start to kind of just scan gambling Twitter and seeing kind of what everybody's on. It's very difficult to find somebody who's not on Trevor Lawrence tonight to score a touchdown because of where his odds were in week 1 and week 2, and they just keep trending upward. And if he scores a rushing touchdown this week, you're not going to get him for better than plus 400 in nearly any matchup going forward. But again, one of the reasons why I do like Lawrence is because, like you said, at Clemson, touchdown machine, like over his final 25 games in college. So that was really the final 2 seasons in college, 17 rushing touchdowns. And it's not, I mean, obviously a lot of them against the ACC, not exactly strong defenses, but some of those rushing touchdowns against Bama, against Ohio State, like some decent defenses. And I honestly think that he's too talented, too strong. Like he's one of these taller guys who can get to that spot, can maybe run around the edge and be able to get that in if they fake it off to Robinson. And also the Bengals defense, like they gave up a rushing touchdown to Kyler Murray in week 3. They almost allowed Justin Fields to score in week 2. Cousins wasn't going to run in week 1. So that one is besides the point. But I just think at plus 450, it's kind of buying high right now. You want to try to get in now because if he scores this week in a primetime game, he's going to be even more of a public play going forward. You're never going to get him over plus 300.
Man, you and I didn't chat before about your plays. We have before in the past, but we didn't. And it always makes me feel so good when we're on the same page because you just crush it all the time with these touchdown props and finding dogs. What I've noticed from Trevor Lawrence, you're right. You talked about some stats and him running around a lot in college. And I thought he would provide fantasy owners a sneaky rushing floor. We didn't see it all in week 1. And then we saw 2 carries in week 2 for 21 yards. And then the Jags, Urban Meyer said that he wanted Trevor Lawrence to trust himself and use his legs and take advantage. If it's there, go ahead and take it. And then we saw 6 rushing attempts last week for 27 rushing yards. So this is a guy who is, I think, obviously he's a rookie. He's not used to losing. He's not used to playing from behind. This is all very new to him, and he has to deal with Urban Meyer. It's like a head case in his maniac. Own. But absolute crazy guy. Shots fired. He's not watching. He's not a friend of the show. But he could run around a little bit in this game. I could see that. I love that call. Plus what? Would you say 450?
Plus 450. And the difference between a Lawrence and a Burrow. So Burrow, I feel like the circumstance that when you're going to get a rushing touchdown from him is probably either at the goal line or within the 5-yard line. Whereas Lawrence, that's somebody that I actually do trust. If we're at the 10-yard line, maybe 11, 12-yard line, I do trust him to be able to just take off and run once the defensive line passes him on a shotgun play. But that's the thing, is that now Lawrence is almost becoming such a public play. And I know the books don't love to give away free money, especially when, like last week when I was on and everybody was on Davis Mills at plus 1,000. So just kind of go in with caution if you're going to bet Lawrence. But at the same time, from a value standpoint, this is literally the best that you can get all season.
Absolutely. I was considering the over on his 14.5 rushing yards too. I may put that in the bet tracker. I got a couple in there. It's not my favorite, but I mean, we just talked about his rushing ability and what he's been doing lately. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we take a break and get into maybe some Sunday games? Is there anything else you wanted to mention from this game here?
Well, there are 2 player props, Meaney, that I am going to bet. And again, I tweeted this out earlier, but I need to almost like go into rehab or something of betting these Jags props, because like really there's just no value on betting a lot of the Bengals props, especially at plus money. So I ended up locking in 2 Jaguars plus money props for players. This one I locked in yesterday for James Robinson. I took him over 3.5 receptions. It was at plus 120 at BetMGM when I grabbed him, and within 4 to 6 hours that dropped to minus 115. So I was very happy with that from the odds shift. And especially with the fact that he caught 6 balls this most recent week. The Bengals, I think they gave up like 14 catches to Naji Harris in week 3, 6 to Dalvin Cook in week 2. Even David Montgomery got in on the action. I think he had 3 receptions in week 2. So again, I just think they're giving up a lot of pass catches to running backs this season so far. So I think that was a good spot. And I like Trevor Lawrence over 1.5 passing touchdowns tonight. That was at plus 120.
Me too.
Also bet MGM. I took that this morning again. Just the garbage time aspect. Again, just thinking that he's too talented. And again, with the wide receivers in play, the Bengals were not a very good secondary last year. They gave up 32 passing touchdowns. That was ranked, I believe, 26th in the NFL last year. And again, I just feel like with these 3 games that we've seen this year from the Bengals, I think a lot of people are just looking at the stats and thinking, oh, okay, well, this defense is pretty good. And it's like, well, actually look at the quarterbacks and the passing matchup that they were facing and why they don't have a lot of touchdowns given up. And then you start to look at it and you start to think, okay, I think actually Lawrence could actually easily throw 2 touchdowns in this game and they still lose by 15 to 20 points.
I think this is going to be a coming out party for Lawrence. Set it off the top. I dig it. I got that in one of my same game parlays as well to have 2 passing touchdowns. I saw 265 total yards. It's passing and rushing yards. Like I'm in on that as well. I think he does have a decent. He may have a couple picks. It's certain he could have a couple picks. They could lose the game. Doesn't matter. But the garbage time could certainly be in play, which we have seen, and he is throwing the ball a ton. I love the Robinson call too as well. I mean, we could get it. We could sweat that one out, Jill, but we could get that maybe late. Like last week when he racked up those 6 catches, and I believe like 3 or 4 of them were on like the final drive or 2, so we could get some garbage time in there as well. Let's take a quick break and we'll take a peek at Sunday. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney, Gilles Gallant here with you. Mean Streets continuing on a Game Plus Network. Let's turn the page here, Jill, and take a peek at maybe some dogs this weekend that you could be feeling. Maybe you're looking at some guys who maybe you think will find the end zone here. I mean, week in and week out, there are, I think, just some massive favorites here. Who are you looking at? Is there anyone that really stands out?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's going to happen is either going to be this week or next week. We're going to see a big favorite renaissance because of the way that the dogs have performed through the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season. And that being said, I still think there's about 3 or 4 games this week that I am eyeing. I'm still kind of deciding of whether or not I'm going to bet them. But I mean, the Vikings at plus 110 as a home underdog versus the Browns, that's probably the most public dog of the week. I think right now they probably pose the biggest challenge against the Browns so far that they've faced this year. Obviously the Chiefs, but again, just going on the road and playing the Vikings can move the ball. Like, they can pretty much pass on anybody, it seems like. Dalvin Cook, I think, is supposed to come back for this game as well. Even though it didn't really matter in week 3, Alex Madison looked just as good. And I just think that with the Vikings, you know, they're pretty good as a home underdog historically under Mike Zimmer. And I just think the Browns, maybe just from a passing attack standpoint, are a little bit vulnerable. I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to move the ball as effectively unless they can run the ball with Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And they look pretty good against the Bears, who are usually a fairly stout running defense. But the Vikings would probably be the one that I would probably consider, even though I think they are probably going to be bet very heavily entering Sunday. Speaking of the Bears, I actually like the Lions. Lions as road underdogs is plus 125. Like, I don't hate that. They score points. They move the ball. And if Matt Nagy keeps shooting himself in the foot and putting Justin Fields in positions where he can't move the ball and they can't do anything, the Lions are going to win that game. And just, you saw it. Like, I mean, I really thought the Bears were going to take care of the Browns in week 3. Didn't try to protect Justin Fields at all. He just got sacked all game. I think he only completed like 6 passes. Like, it was just ugly to watch. Cardinals, I think, is going to be a very popular underdog this week as well against the Rams. That one I don't love as much, even though it is plus 145. You're getting 2 3-0 teams. This one, though, I do like. I love the Seahawks at plus 130 to beat the 49ers this week. I think that's the one out of the 4, the one I like the most, even though I was the guy at the beginning of the season talking about how I put a 125 to 1 bet, like just a little pizza money kind of thing, on the Seahawks to finish with the worst record in the NFL, just because I thought if Russell goes down or gets hurt at all, like the Seahawks are so weak in other spots that they'll just go into the tank if anything was to happen to him. Obviously, I don't really like to make bets with injury in mind. Gambler will smite me if I put too much money on stuff like that. So again, I think out of the 4, the Seahawks as plus 130 road underdogs, I think that's the one I like the most for week 4.
Listen, you and I are on the same page when it comes to the Niners. We've talked about it before. I think we both agree that they're a little bit overrated. And this Seattle, I put this in Sunday night, is Seattle plus 3.5. I do, use our prop shop. You get the best possible odds. I'm seeing some pretty decent odds for some of these teams. Yeah, Minnesota, you can get at plus 118. Kirk Cousins he's cooking. Like, dude has been really, really strong. He's got the number 1 completion percentage in a clean pocket. They're protecting him, and he's carving up defenses. I do like the Detroit one because you're right. It's Matt Nagy. Like, Matt Nagy just clearly, we've talked so much on this show, Jill, about how he can't play to Justin Fields' strengths. Like, he can't. It was proof right there. Week 1 or week 3, it was absolute proof. They drafted this guy months ago. They had months to prepare for a game plan. They had 2 quarterback design runs. They had 1 play in where they were in motion. They just set him up to fail. There was no end arounds. There was no bootlegs. Like, there was nothing. He's just like, it was back there, not protecting him. 5 men, like, just not protecting him at all and putting him in the worst possible place to succeed. And if who cares? Like, if it's Dalton, whatever, like, it doesn't matter. Like, this Bears offense is broken. Nagy is not the right guy for the job. And you're right. Detroit, man, they held their own last week. I mean, if Justin Tucker doesn't set an NFL record, they win that game. And then they didn't give up in week 1 against San Fran. And they were in that game towards the end as well. On the way out
in week 2 against the Packers. That's right. At halftime in week 2 versus the Packers. So, like, again, it just –
that's right.
And one of the things, too, that Matt Nagy, there's no way that he could have entered the season thinking that Andy Dalton was going to start all 16 games. I feel like that's just a complete, like, pie in the sky type of thought, especially when you have Justin Fields on your roster. So the fact that there was no plays or no kind of system designed to be able to exploit what Justin Fields does well as a quarterback just makes me think this is going to carry over to week 4. Because if you didn't have it ready for week 3, what makes me think that you're going to have it ready for week 4?
Totally. Our guy George here, who runs a lot of boards for us, says G-Dog and Meaney, the best of the best from up north. We appreciate the support, George, and we appreciate everything that you do for us. I mean, the boards are slick all the time, and you're a big part of that.
George and Tino are MVPs, man. George and
MVPs.
Tino, MVPs.
MVPs. On the way out, I got to ask you, we only got about a minute. Cowboys looked awesome. Last week. Crushed the Eagles. Back-to-back weeks, I think Dak has just... Actually, you know what? Give him credit for week one, too. He looked awesome in week one.
Mm-hmm.
He is just in control of this offense, calling audibles at the line of scrimmage. I think the Eagles thought maybe that the Cowboys would just throw all over them, be a lot of CeeDee, a lot of Amari Cooper, and it was just like, no, you know what? You're not stacking the box. We're just going to run all over you. Do you like them this week against Carolina? Because Carolina is one of those teams, too. Yes, they're 3-0, but who have they played? They played the Saints.
Yeah,
Okay, fine. How good are the Saints? What do you think about Dallas this week? They were -4, and now I'm seeing 5. Would you consider them?
Well, again, because of my strategy and the way I bet, generally I wouldn't take a -5, especially because I'm the type of emotional hedge guy. I always bet against the Cowboys, so that way if they win, I'm very happy. If I lose, at least I get a little money in my pocket. That being said, I don't think people are ready to see this defense because I think Sam Darnold's going to throw at least 2 interceptions in this game. I'm really shocked at how improved the secondary is and the pass rush, especially when DeMarcus Lawrence went down. Like, I really did not think that Micah Parsons could play the edge like that. And the offensive line, like you saw it against the Eagles, they beat up that defensive line. I could not believe that Fletcher Cox was getting pushed back like that against like Zach Martin. So for me right now, that's going to be the key to the matchup is can the Cowboys offensive line be just as stout against Carolina's defensive line? And I know that they can move the ball. They have the pass catchers to do it. And then from a secondary standpoint, especially with no McCaffrey, I think this is the spot that you would grab the Cowboys because I don't really think that DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are going to be able to take the top off on the secondary the way that they might have been able to when the threat of McCaffrey is sitting there in the backfield.
Cowboys look good, dude. Their division to lose. There's no question about that. I think the biggest thing for me is what you talked about, the defense. Man, Parsons looks great stepping in for Lawrence and, generating some pressure on the quarterback and just moving all over the field. And then, of course, Trayvon Diggs, who has been a hot topic in the FTN Discord chat this week as a potential defensive player of the year. Jump on that before it's too late. A pick in each of his first 3 games. He looks like a dude. Always a pleasure, man. Fantastic stuff from you always. Dog Day Afternoon and Touchdown Town, 2 shows you need to check out. It will put a lot of money in your pocket. GDog 5000 on the Twitter machine. That is Gilles Gallant. We're going to talk a little DFS, and I got some same game parlays for you. Yes, we're going to continue to talk Bengals and Jags here on Mean Streets. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Gilles Gallant is phenomenal. I love my conversations with him every Thursday. We're going to continue to talk Bengals and Chargers. Chargers are on my mind. I think they're absolutely elite, actually, by the way. But we're going to talk Bengals and Jaguars. I got a couple picks here for you. This is what I'm thinking from a prop standpoint. I really do like Marvin Jones a lot. I think, people may be sick of me talking about Marvin Jones, but 4.5 catches is kind of juiced up. I'm fine with the 5.5. Like 4.5 is something we had in the bet tracker at a reasonable price earlier on. I'm seeing like minus 140 now for Marvin Jones. I'm still okay with it. 5.5 is plus money. But again, FTN Alerts is the Twitter account for you. You follow that, you get notified right away when we make a bet. You get the best possible odds. I am fine with 5.5, 4.5. Whatever. It's really all about you, what you feel comfortable with you taking that risk. You put, I don't know, a unit, 1.4 units to win 1 unit. I'm fine with that. I think Marvin Jones is still going to continue to be a big part of this offense. At least 5 grabs in each of his 3 games here and 6 catches in back-to-back games. DJ Chark, his catch prop is at 3.5. I don't know how much volume he'll have. I think the opportunities will be there. We talked about the pace that the Jaguars play, quicker than anybody inside the top 3 in passing percentage as well. And DJ Chark is just that deep threat guy for me. So he only needs 1 or 2 catches. I mean, one he had in week 1 was a big long play, which he converted for a touchdown. He also had a touchdown last week as well. Like, he is interesting. I think Jones is the guy inside the red zone, but we could see like a couple deep shots for DJ Chark, who is the 3rd most air yards, using our free air yards tool over at FTN Daily and FTNFantasy.com. He is a guy that's getting, shots down the field. And he has, since he's entered the league, it's just he's had poor quarterback play over the past couple of years. He's had a little bit of poor quarterback play right now with Trevor Lawrence. But like I said, I think Lawrence is in for a game. A lot of Jags here. Jags to cover 7.5. And James Robinson over 22.5 receiving yards. Jill came in here and gave the prop on 3.5 catches. He had 6 grabs last week. He's been, part of the offense when they're playing from behind. He's on the field, 3rd down role. It didn't look like that, in the preseason. It was a lot of Travis Etienne before he got hurt, but it was also Carlos Hyde who was getting some targets as well. But we see Robinson here, 15 targets, 12 grabs in his 3 games so far. And then Tyler Boyd, no T. Higgins here. He's got the 3rd best matchup according to our wide receiver quarterback matchup tool. I mean, a lot of guys are going to have soft matchups against the Jags this season. Boyd, as much as Joe Burrow is not chucking it as much, I do believe that Boyd, this is plus money, by the way, that Boyd will probably rack up maybe 7 to 8 targets in this game. He's in the slot. I think if you're looking for, a yardage prop for the Bengals, it's probably Jamar Chase. But what Jill said is a lot of these guys are indeed juiced up, a lot of these Bengals players, but you can get plus money still on Tyler Boyd to have 6 catches in the slot with no T. Higgins. And I got a couple long shot same game parlays here. Tino, if you want to switch over to those and see what we are looking at here today. Look at this board from my guy, George. Are you kidding me? How sharp is this? I love it. The Burrow and the Lawrence, man, I'm a little bit too excited, I think, about this game here today with these 2 former number 1 overall quarterbacks. So look at this one, 7-1. I just love these same game parlays, bet builders for those north of the border playing Bet365. Elliot Chris is the king at these same game parlays, but I wanted to do a little kind of dabble here a little bit as well. So I just love how it correlates, right? Like if Marvin Jones catches 6 balls and Tyler Boyd catches 6 balls, I think that they get their yardage. Marvin Jones is more of a deep threat guy than Boyd. Boyd would have to be strong after the catch, which he is. Remember the touchdown that he had last week against the Steelers, man, how strong did he look there? He's bouncing off guys and found a way to get inside the end zone. So 60 yards and 6 grabs, Jones 6 grabs and 66 receiving yards. And then Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence to each have 2 passing touchdowns and then touchdowns to their guys. Is Jamar Chase going to have another touchdown? Honestly, Joe Burrow told the Bengals organization, they asked him. Now, whether he said draft an offensive lineman or draft my guy, Jamar Chase, whether Zach Taylor was going to, say, okay, whatever you want to do, we'll do. Probably not. But don't kid yourself. Joe Burrow, he even said it after that he told the Bengals, man, take my guy. And don't you think they are going to try to have another game with a touchdown, especially if this game gets out of hand? So he's already broken the NFL record for a rookie wide receiver. He's got a touchdown in each of his 3 games. He's got 4 total. These guys are going to try to hook up one more time. There's no question. And we just talked about Jones earlier with Jill, a big red zone threat. He had 10 touchdowns as a member of the Bengals back in the day. He's had at least 9 in 3 of his past 4 seasons. He's been among the leaders in red zone targets. And then this one here is a massive long shot at 33-1. I got Trevor Lawrence over 250 passing yards. I got him to have have 15 rushing yards. You got Mixon over 86.5. Mixon's going to touch the ball 20 plus times in this game. He's going to find the end zone. James Robinson over 23.5 receiving yards on this one. And then Marvin Jones again, kind of all in on Marvin Jones over 5.5. If you want to take that Jones one out, that would still give you like 28-1 for this same game parlay. All right. We'll finally turn the page on this game. We'll talk some DFS plays. Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. So I wanted to talk a little DFS here with you guys. Tomorrow is going to be heavy DFS, so I'm just going to kind of rapid fire through some of my thoughts, and we'll get the professional David Jones in here tomorrow. But here are some of my top DFS plays. Now, some of these guys may be chalky, but I think if you're just a first-time player in DFS, you want to play some smaller contests, some head-to-heads, I think these guys will score some points for you. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes up at the top. Don't need to really spend too much time on either of these guys, but Allen had 5 total touchdowns last week. He has a Texans team. They're heavy favorites in this game, and they're a pass-happy offense. Patrick Mahomes is going to get right this week against Philadelphia. We have a 55-point total. They've been sloppy, careless with the football. They've lost 2 straight. They're in dead last in their division. Are you kidding me? After 3 weeks, who would have saw that coming? But the point total in their games have been 62 points. That's the average for those games. So I think we're going to see a lot of offense again this week in the Kansas City and Philadelphia game. Derrick Henry, I just don't want people to get too cute here with Henry. Yeah, he's expensive. He's not expensive enough. Julio Jones most likely not going to play. A.J. Brown not going to play. He has 63 attempts in his last 2 games, 13 red zone rushing attempts. The Jets are dead last, or actually they've given up the most red zone rushing attempts this season because their offense is not good and putting their defense in bad spots. I used our split tool in 6 games since 2019 where the Titans have been touchdown favorites. Derrick Henry averages 25 touches and 23 DraftKings points. He's going to hit the 100-yard mark on the ground. You're going to get the bonus points. He's going to get all the work inside the red zone. He's going to touch the ball 25 plus times inside this game. And with those top guys out for the Titans, the wide receivers, he may catch a couple more balls. He's got 13 catches on 13 targets, at least 3 grabs in each of his 3 games. They're not going to be playing from behind, so there won't be any garbage time here, but he could fall into a screen pass or 2. Najee Harris leads the NFL among running backs in snaps. 96% of his team snaps. Is the only back over 90%. 24 targets and 19 grabs in his last 2 games. He's just underpriced. We have a good sample of running backs inside Mike Tomlin's offense. Big Ben can't push the ball down the field. He's just checking it down to Najee Harris. Chase Edmonds, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Smith, Travis Kelce, and Logan Thomas here to kind of round it out. Kelce, I mean, he's the safest player outside of Derrick Henry. Get him in your Mahomes stacks. Don't play him just by himself. There's a huge drop off at the tight end position from him and then George Kittle. Just play him with Mahomes. And if you're going to fade the KC offense, maybe sprinkle in Logan Thomas, the only player in the NFL to play 100% of his team snaps. He has a touchdown or 40 yards in each game this season. McLaurin's just in a really good spot against the Falcons, allowing the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers. He's got 19 grabs and 25 targets on the season. I really like Washington overall. I mean, you see Thomas, you see McLaurin. We'll get into Heineke in the next segment. And then Cooper Kupp, again, just whatever, like eat the chalk, get different elsewhere. Maybe in tournaments you want to fade him, get some leverage from the field and play maybe a Robert Woods or a Tyler Higbee. But why are we messing around with Cooper Kupp? Like clearly Matthew Stafford loves this guy. He's number one in catches and in yards and in touchdowns. They're just playing pitch and catch. Like Sean McVay has talked about this offense, no limitations. We're just seeing it like until teams find a way to take away Cooper Kupp. And I just don't know if they can because he's such a great route runner and McVay's such a great play caller that I have no problem rolling him out. Chase Edmonds is in there because I think maybe more of a tournament play than a cash play, but he's sixth in routes run at the running back position. He's got 17 targets, which is tied for the third most. We saw Gio in a game where they had to play from behind last week with the Bucs, catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. And I think the Rams are just going to score a lot of points, like probably 30 here in a high total game against Arizona. And Connor, I don't think will get a lot done on the ground. And he had a couple red zone rushing attempts, which he converted for touchdowns last week. And Kyler can call his own numbers. So I think Chase Edmonds probably a sneaky tournament play because he will go under the radar, but he is involved through the air as well as on the ground. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll continue the DFS talk, but we'll talk about a couple value plays for tournaments. Keep her locked. You're watching Mean Streets here on a Game Plus Network. Going to continue the NFL DFS talk for Week 4. So we talked about a couple of my favorite cash game plays. Most of those guys were certainly expensive. Let's talk about some value here. Jalen Hurts, I think he's still valuable. I think he's underpriced. He's got 300 yards passing or 60 yards rushing in his 6 starts. Dead game last week and still ended up with 25 fantasy points. He's averaging 26 DraftKings points in his 6 starts in the NFL. Tyler Heineke, 44 rushing yards, a little bit of a sneaky floor there. Overall, not great. 223 passing yards per game, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, but underpriced. The cheapest I would go at the quarterback position. Atlanta allowing the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. If you wanted to come off Josh Allen, he will be chalky. I'm fine with playing him in tournaments. Maybe just considered Zach Moss, 8 red zone rushing attempts in 2 games. He's got 3 total touchdowns. The Bills are 17-point favorites. It's leverage off Allen and Diggs. Don't go chasing Sanders. I think he could be okay this week, but maybe this is actually, I say maybe, let's be honest. This team's going to be up in the game in the second half. And they're going to be running the rock. Hopefully they're running it with Zach Moss. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we just saw Dallas run all over Philadelphia. He had 17 for 100 last week, a couple catches. He's only 5'4". Like he was 4'8" last week, priced the same as Jeremy McNichols. I don't know what DraftKings is doing. They do not like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Otto Beckham Jr. is also a value here. He had 9 targets, 5 grabs, and 77 yards last week. I was very encouraged with his performance. Minnesota allowing a 75% completion rate to quarterbacks, the number 1 mark in the NFL, and 10.1 yards per pass attempt, the 2nd mark in the NFL, the 2nd highest, and the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. It doesn't look like Julio Jones is going to play. It doesn't. And AJ Brown's not going to play either. So Westbrook-Ikhine in a really good spot here. He could finish again. He led all Titans in snaps and targets. It could be another week for him where he leads in targets and snaps. And he had a touchdown last week. He's just 3-2. He's so cheap. Like, how could you not play this guy? Sprinkle him in at least one of your lineups. Jalen Waddle had 13 targets and 12 grabs last week, 17.8 fantasy points. He didn't really do anything with those catches, 58 yards. but he does have 26 targets and 22 catches. Jacoby Brissett leaned on him. He probably leans on him a little bit again. Dawson Knox, same sort of deal, just a good spot for Buffalo against Houston, the fourth most fantasy points to the tight end position. We saw O'Shaughnessy have a day, Brighton Hooper combined for 89 yards, and Tommy Tremble had a touchdown last week, tight end for Carolina. And then Disley's on there because Everett is ruled out. Just a punt play if you're playing multiple lineups, but get involved with Logan Thomas and Travis Kelce. Thanks so much, as always, for taking the time to hang out here today. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more DFS, and we'll have some props and some picks for you as well. Enjoy the football game tonight. Jags cover. Cheers.